Oh, sorry, there was a fourth question. Are there specific sectors, example, water, transportation, broadband, or if there are others, it's a long answer, put in your information, what you're interested in learning more about. All right, has everyone had a chance to respond? Looks like we have lots of answers coming in. Are you able to close the poll, Amma? I'm not able to close it on my end.
The poll is closed.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I'd just like to introduce and say a few words about our guest today. Jodie Parmar is the head of project development of Western Canada, leading the CIBC, leading and not the CIBC, I'm going to say CIBC, CIB's engagement with both public and private project sponsors in the Western region across all investment sectors. Jodie is also the national lead for agriculture infrastructure, whereby he leads CIB's investment activities in agriculture and agri-food. In his role, Jodie offers advice, makes investments consistent with CIB's focus on new infrastructure and key priority initiatives. Jodie has almost 30 years experience in lending to structuring and advising on project finance and public partnerships transactions across a variety of infrastructure asset classes. He holds an MBA from the University of Toronto, Rotman School of Management, and a BA in economics from the University of Regina. He also holds a certificate with honors in business intelligence, data analyst, and reporting from St. Polytech in Calgary. Jodie has a CPA, CMA, and has also completed executive development programs at institutions such as Harvard Business School and Queen's University. So today, the title of our webinar is the Canada Infrastructure Bank, Delivering Tangible Outcomes in Manitoba. Topic is Introduction to CIB, Investments Made to Date in Manitoba, and a preliminary explanation of opportunities for future investments in rural Manitoba. Jodie, I'd like to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Deanna, and grateful to be here. And thank you, everyone, for joining this morning. I'm tag teaming this morning with my colleague, Kiera. Kiera, maybe a little wave from you.
Hi, everyone.
And so I think Manitoba folks are experiencing minus 30-ish weather. So I'm in Alberta, and it's sort of closer to minus 20. So, nevertheless, rather than having to venture out to an in-person event, we get to sit in our offices and not have to venture out in this cold weather. So as Deanna said, I'm based in Calgary. I cover Western Canada, so BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And I do try to get out to each province as required, but no less frequently than bi-monthly or quarterly. But oftentimes I'll be in a region more frequently than that. For example, in Manitoba, I was out, I think, 3 times in in December. So if there is a business opportunity that requires an in-person visit meeting, I'm happy to do that. Okay, Kira, next slide. Please. So the Canada Infrastructure Bank is a federal crown corporation. We've been in existence for approximately 8 years. We are a impact investor, which means that we're looking to deliver a public good. So we're less focused on the financial return on our investments, but rather the public good that they may have in regards to economic growth, connecting communities through broadband, and addressing the infrastructure challenges that are faced by communities across Canada, including Indigenous communities. Oftentimes, the projects that we're investing in, they may have some grants, but there's still a gap in the capital that's necessary to move the project forward. So the bank provides flexible and patient capital in order to help move those projects forward. Our investments are more often than not repayable loans into infrastructure projects that are generating revenue. Water, wastewater are a prime example of revenue generating projects. And we do that in partnership with municipal, provincial governments, with Indigenous communities, and alongside private and institutional capital. The entire purpose or a big part of the purpose behind the bank is to get infrastructure built sooner. Historically, public sector, whether it's provincial or municipal, would have to wait multiple years trying to cobble together a variety of grants to move a project forward. With our concessional financing, communities are able to move forward more quickly and less reliance on that grant funding. Kira, next slide, please. So the bank has 5 priority sectors. You will often hear us also refer to them as investment sectors as well. And those are in the slide in front of you. So public transit, clean power, green infrastructure, broadband, trade, and transport. And each of those have various subsectors or initiatives associated with them as well. For example, in clean power, in addition to solar and wind, we've also invested in a small modular nuclear reactor in Ontario. We'll invest in energy storage, transmission, and interties as well. And that's the case for all 5 of our priority sectors. And we also have long-term targets associated with those. So they're not necessarily fixed, but that is the target that we're working towards in regards to the capital that we're looking to deploy. We do have a number of initiatives as well that span those 5 priority sectors. And one of our more prominent ones is the Indigenous Community Infrastructure Initiative, where we're looking to alleviate the infrastructure challenges that are being faced by Indigenous communities. and also for the purposes of economic reconciliation as well. Project acceleration is a earlier stage investment program that we have that allows us to invest in feasibility studies, business cases, to invest in front-end engineering and design as well. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, we're an impact investor that's enabling critical infrastructure to be built across Canada. And we are one of the largest, if not the largest, investor in infrastructure in Canada. To date, we've invested, this would be as of the end of the second quarter of the current fiscal year, we have invested $13 billion in infrastructure projects across Canada. And because we act as a multiplier, those projects that we've invested in have a total capex of approximately $36 billion. So as you can see, our 13 billion has act as a catalyst to enable $36 billion in infrastructure investments across the country. And we've done so across the country, around the various provinces and territories, across the various priority sectors, and with rural, remote, and Indigenous communities as well. Next slide, please. This map will give you an indication of the number of projects by province, and then the red maple leaf with the 11 in indicates ones that span multiple jurisdictions, and that, for example, could be in our broadband space. So in total, as of the end of the second quarter of the current fiscal year, 75 partnerships. Next slide, please. So earlier, I talked about us being a impact investor, and those impacts that we're looking to have: reduction in GHGs, increased ridership for public transit, connecting households through broadband, the GDP in regards to Canada's trade and transportation, and closing the Indigenous infrastructure gap. And as you will see, for example, through our investments in broadband, we've connected an additional 450,000 households to high-speed broadband. Next slide, please. One initiative that we have is our Infrastructure for Housing initiative, and I believe everyone appreciates, understands the challenges that we are facing as a country in regards to housing. So the bank is investing in the infrastructure, not the housing itself, but the infrastructure to enable that housing. So for example, water, wastewater, or roads, and the like. And so this is an initiative that was launched in 2023, and we are using our low-cost financing in collaboration with the private sector or institutional investors to enable this. Next slide, please. So I think some of you may be familiar with the investment that we made in the city of Brandon for water, wastewater, and that clearly will help to advance housing in that community. And we can also invest in public transit, clean power, and roads, bridges. For example, the new subdivision in a community requires an interchange to become for access and egress to that new subdivision or that new community. We're able to invest in that type of infrastructure as well. And it can obviously a new community requires, or a new subdivision will require, a variety of infrastructure asset classes. And so the project can also encompass more than one type of asset class. So that is something to bear in mind as well. Next slide, please. So this slide I think illustrates what I spoke about earlier. And we are not the sole source of capital for the purposes of infrastructure to enable housing. And so this slide gives you an indication of the other sources of federal funding that is available. And in most cases, we will, when a community or an organization is a level of government is looking to understand what other federal programs that may be available, we'll often refer them to our colleagues at Prairie's Economic Development Canada as well to help with that pathfinding. Next slide, please.
Good morning. Yes.
I'm Daniel. I'm calling from Laser Grant.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, but I'm just on a virtual meeting right now. Can I call you back?
You're not on me.
Apologies for that. She's muted now.
Oh, no worries. So CIB invests in municipal infrastructure that has a revenue stream. So when we do invest in a project, we are required to do so alongside private or institutional capital, and we target a one-to-one ratio between ourselves and the private institutional capital. And we do so in a way that where we blend the interest rate between ourselves and the private capital to equal the Government of Canada's borrowing rate. So just as an illustrative example, and just to simplify things, assume the Government of Canada's rate is 3%, and the private capital is 4%. We would lower our interest rate to 2%. So 4 plus 2 equals 6, divided by 2 is 3. So that's a very simple example of how we provide a weighted average cost of capital comparable to the Government of Canada's long-term lending rate. So that's a rate that is even lower than what a provincial government is able to borrow. So that's a manner in which we are enabling and accelerating the investments in capital. So we're addressing both the access to capital issue and the cost of capital issue through our infrastructure for housing initiative. Next slide, please. So in general, we are looking in our infrastructure for housing initiative. We're looking for projects that have at least $50 million of capex, and that 50 million, 25 million would come from CIB, and 25 million would come from private or institutional capital on that basis of that weighted average cost of capital that I spoke with. Now, that project would need to generate incremental revenues. So that may be new property taxes or development charges. In the case of water, wastewater, that would be rates associated with water, wastewater, as an example. So we're able to lend to a municipality directly, to a government business and enterprise, so a municipally controlled corporation, or also to a developer that is supported by the municipality as well. This infrastructure has to be new infrastructure, where we're not investing in rehabilitation of existing, but it could be an expansion or an upgrade to existing infrastructure. And what we are very much focused on is the incremental new housing units that are being generated by our investment. Now, this can be single family, it can be, or multifamily housing units. So it's the absolute quantum that of those new housing units that we are focused on. Next slide, please. So touched about on this briefly earlier. So this was a water wastewater investment in the city of Brandon. And the private capital in this particular case was provided by a Manitoba-based credit union. And so the project improved water, wastewater constraints, but it also increased the capacity of that infrastructure for the growth of housing in Brandon as well. And there may be some urban myths out there, but we do not require that infrastructure to be operated or maintained in a certain manner. That doesn't need to be a privately operated, maintained, or public-private partnership. It can continue to be owned, operated, and maintained by the municipality. So just want to clarify that. So we don't require you to change the delivery model of that infrastructure. Next slide, please. This was our first investment in Manitoba, Valley Fiber, and the private or institutional capital in this particular project came from a European infrastructure fund. So we're looking to invest with global capital from around the world, subject to knowing and that the money is coming in an ethical manner and things like that. But know your client, anti-money laundering and things like that. But in general, we're looking to attract capital from around the world to invest in Canadian infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this is investment that we made in the Thompson Regional Airport. This is one that's key for Indigenous communities, also key for the exploration development of critical minerals in the north as well. and this is one. I guess I was up in Thompson, uh, but more than two years ago, and this we're very proud of well, all of our investments in Manitoba and across the country, but this is one that we're very proud about, and it's serving a large number of northern and Indigenous communities in northern Manitoba. Next slide, please. Okay, well, that's the end of the formal presentation. There's a QR code there and also an email address in order to follow up subsequent to today's session if you do have a particular project that you wish to talk about. Deanna, I think I'm going to turn it back to you for Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Jodie, for all that information. Just one question that came to mind when you were speaking about Valley Fiber and finding that partner investor. What is the process that you have to go through to vet that organization before you bring them on board or engage with them?
Right. So it's various information that has to be shared, and we have a database that we use in regards to vetting our partners, whether they're the project partner or the entity that's providing the capital for the project. So there's a few forms that have to be filled out.
Yeah, no
and
doubt.
then we have a risk function at the bank that undertakes takes that review.
Right. And now when you spoke about working with Brandon on their water project, now Brandon worked with the local financial institution, and how did you support and build that partnership, or what was your role in that?
In that particular case, the credit unions had relationships with Brandon, and we're also working with a collective of municipalities called RSR, and they had already identified those credit unions. So oftentimes our public sector partner or we also invest in privately owned infrastructure as well. And so oftentimes the partner will have a relationship with an existing bank or credit union or other capital provider, and we're quite happy to work with them. Alternatively, we have extensive relationships with banks, other financial institutions such as insurance companies, but also infrastructure funds, pension funds, and so we also can access that network of relationships to see if they have an interest in a particular project as well.
Wonderful. I'm just going to offer everyone to add their questions into the chat, and we can have a bigger discussion. So until we get some questions rolling through our chat, Jodie, I'm just going to speak a little bit about the complexities of economic development in our rural communities. Some of the key issues, like you spoke to, housing, and one of the big parts of housing is being ready for your housing projects and determining where the infrastructure gaps, how they come to the forefront. So what do you think, how can we align our projects with priorities that the federal government has? How do we better prepare ourselves as rural municipalities for these types of projects?
I think one of the larger challenges that the bank faces is the size of the investment opportunity. So we've been very mindful of the monies allocated to us, and we're very diligent in managing those. So we've tried to keep the number of staff that we have at CIB to the minimum necessary to deliver on that. And obviously, a large project relative to a smaller one will require the same number of staff to work on it, and that's why we have these minimum thresholds. That so what communities can do in order to address those minimum thresholds that we have is to come together with a bundle of projects that help to meet our minimum investment thresholds. And when we started working with Brandon and RSR, we had a higher threshold, higher than the $50 million that I had talked about earlier. And so with the assistance of the government of Manitoba, we were able to identify the opportunity to work with both Brandon and RSR collectively to have agreements that were fairly similar. So that reduced our expenses related to external legal counsel and things like that. So I think in regards to working with CIB, that is a key thing that smaller municipalities can do is come together, which is very common on the prairies, to come together and work together, and that definitely helps us to make investments approach. Now, subsequently, so when we were initially working with Brandon and RSR, our minimum investment size was $100 million, and so them working together definitely helped to overcome that. Now, subsequently, based upon the direction that we received from the shareholder, the Government of Canada, we reduced that threshold, but that's still a fairly significant threshold for a small community on their own. So that spirit of collaboration continues to be important in regards to working with CIB for smaller communities.
Right. Thank you. That was very well put. When we're working with our smaller communities again, I've got a question here from Nadine. So please elaborate on best practices, WRT, getting CIB involved early. So, and we're speaking to that a bit. And then again, the feasibility study, the business case study. Nadine, would you like anything else to add? Yeah, so she just shared that question in the chat. So elaborate on best practices.
My
And
apologies. I had to find the unmute button. I was
oh,
way into the
sorry
community.
to put you on the spot. I just wanted you to come on the call.
No, I appreciate that. And let me just start by saying how much I've enjoyed this presentation. It was so well, I guess, in easy terms to understand presented. And your 30 years of experience came across in spades. I really appreciate everything that you shared, everything that the organization does, the suggestion, as well as communities coming together. Now, in the past, I actually attended some presentations on public-private partnerships. So I know there's actually a lot that the third party can bring in terms of expertise, new alternatives that perhaps haven't been considered, global experience, and that sort of thing. So when it comes to best serving the public interest in the best possible way, I see exponential benefits, including CIB, but I was intrigued by the additional suggestion of perhaps earlier involvement in terms of the feasibility studies, the business case development. So I thought perhaps if you could share that as well, that would be very valuable. So I'll put myself on mute again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. Great. Thank you, Nadine, for your kind words and the question. So our starting premise when we're looking at potential project acceleration investments is will there ultimately be a project that we're able to invest in that meets our investment criteria? So if we know that it's going to be too small of a project or there's not going to be a revenue stream associated from that project, we would not make a project acceleration investment. So there is that sort of initial screening. What's the likelihood that the project that ultimately results would be eligible for a CIB? No, it doesn't have to be guaranteed, but those are some of the initial screening questions that we have. Will there be a revenue stream? Will it be large enough for a CIB investment? And if we're able to say yes to those types of questions, then it positions that project for a project acceleration investment. And so for project acceleration, we would not provide more than 50% of the monies necessary for that feasibility study or for the engineering and design necessary to advance a project. And we're currently working with the city of Montreal and the province of Quebec on a large study for the purposes of infrastructure for housing. There, it's a third, a third, a third. We're working with the government of Alberta and a couple of municipalities in the east central part of the province, and there the split is a bit different. We've worked on short line rail in Alberta as well. So as long as the project falls within one of our 5 priority sectors, does the project have the potential to meet our various investment criteria? Those are all factors, but we would need to understand the particulars of a specific project, and happy to have that conversation as a follow-up. But these investments have ranged from approximately $250,000 from CIB's perspective up to $5 million or even higher, because we do understand that there is a significant cost in getting infrastructure to a shovel-ready stage as well.
Thank you for that. I have another question here. Are there subcategories of the 5 priorities that are higher priorities to finance than others? So the scalability or the scale of your internal practices.
I would say that that we're relatively agnostic in regards to the 5 priority areas, investment sectors, and the various subsectors within each of those 5. So it's essentially, think of it, that public interest test, one of those vague political science or public policy terms, but our first part of that test is, does it fall within one of those 5, and and is one of those asset types within one of those 5. The other important thing is it achieving the impact that we're looking to achieve. So it would be, in the case of greenhouse gases, is it reducing greenhouse gases and or avoiding greenhouse gases from being produced by the investment? So But in general, I would say, if I understand the question correctly, is that we are relatively agnostic between the 5 sectors and the various subsectors or initiatives. Our focus really is on if it falls within our investment criteria, then it's really about getting more infrastructure built in Canada and achieving those impacts. And currently, we're not getting close to those targets either. So please continue to bring new projects to our attention without worrying whether that we've seen too many public transit projects and we're not interested. As an example, we are interested in inbounds for all 5 of our investment priority areas.
Great, perfect. Thank you. Another question here. If an applicant is not approved, are they able to receive feedback to strengthen a future project? And how closely do you work with those applicants once they've submitted an application? Or is there a process of working with an applicant prior to them finalizing an application and submitting?
Unlike most federal, provincial, or municipal programs, we really don't have an application form per se. The first meeting really is to have a conversation about the project. We'll ask questions to see whether it fits, our general investment guardrails, as we like to call them, or investment criteria. And then really it's a business case, a financial model. It's the underlying technical work, the engineering and design, where are you at in your procurement process? It's those types of, so it isn't a multi-page application with a form that we have. It's a much more iterative type of process.
Good to know. Another question, as communities have voiced their concern about accountability and systemic barriers, and efforts have been made to center on facilitating strategies with First Nation communities and coming up with practical solutions. So how can municipalities and First Nations collaborate with the province and the federal partners to fund large-scale infrastructure projects? And have you worked on those before? Any examples you could share in up communities?
So we're currently working on a regional agricultural infrastructure project that is supported by all 4 Western provinces. So it's a project that has a high degree of support, but we've also seen broadband projects that span more than one region, more than one province, as well. So yes, we're very open to projects that benefit multiple communities. We have a broadband project in Alberta that benefits multiple Indigenous communities. So it is something that we're very supportive of. It may add a layer of complexity, but we're very comfortable dealing with that type of complexity.
Very good, thank you. I'm just going to jump into the water and wastewater infrastructure. Questions arise about addressing immediate needs, and it seems to be a challenge and, of course, struggles for our smaller communities. And the best way to lay the groundwork for long-term success. So what solutions would you recommend, or what approaches have you seen in smaller communities with aging water and wastewater infrastructure, and how were they dealt with?
Well, that's a very good question.
It's a big one.
And obviously this was a general discussion today. We do have a team at the bank that is focused on infrastructure for housing and also do our standalone water wastewater projects. So I would be happy to connect you to them for a discussion. But I think for smaller communities, at least from the bank's perspective, it is getting to that minimum investment size. So minimum of $50 million total capex, where the bank would be able to invest a minimum of 25 and the other 25 coming from private or institutional capital. And that 50 would be net of any grant monies that you have. So, if it's $100 million project, and you have $75 million in grants, unfortunately, that would be too small for us. So we always net out the grants from the total capex to get to a net capex number. So the project would have to enable us to invest 25, and for the private or institutional to invest 25 as well. So that's why we strongly encourage that bundling, that collaboration amongst the smaller communities in order to facilitate a CIB investment, and that you're receptive to the same terms and conditions.
Okay, thank you. That was great. One more question for you here. Are there funding opportunities specifically focused on implementing green technology in water and wastewater infrastructure such as water recycling and energy efficient treatment systems?
Definitely we would be open
Prioritize. Oh.
to investing in projects that were adopting that type of technology. But for water, wastewater, if the purpose is to enable new housing, then we're focused on the impact being the new housing units. We also do invest in water, wastewater on a standalone basis, and there really it's to ensure that municipalities are getting to the applicable provincial and federal regulatory requirements in regards to the water. So there's a very large project in the Metro Vancouver area where that has been the primary focus of that project, is to bring that wastewater plant into compliance with provincial and federal regulatory requirements.
Now, I just got another question in the chat box here, and just wondering if there might be procurement and oversight advantages of communities coming together.
Well, it definitely would allow, when you do have that scale, that does enable the communities to engage consultants that may have a wider range of experience and know-how that they'd be able to bring to a project or a bundle of projects. So yeah, I think fundamentally the bank is a investor or a lender. And that is the focus of the advice that we provide. Um, we're not a procurement entity such as next door. You have SAS Builds in Ontario. You have Infrastructure Ontario. That's not the role that the bank plays in regards to infrastructure across the country. We're really there to enable projects through the provision of concessional capital.
Now, another question we have here, just for clarification, can smaller communities join together in a region to reach the minimum investment, even if it would cause multiple projects to take place across a large region?
The short answer is yes. I mean, the devil is always in the details, but the short answer is yes, absolutely, because we are Canada's infrastructure bank, and we do want to find ways to support smaller communities as well. And so we have said that bundling is a pathway to getting CIB investments. So we will work with you in regards to that.
All right, that's great news. Another question here is, are there examples of successful regional partnerships for lagoon or treatment plant upgrades that CIB has supported, and what lessons could we learn from them, optimizing cost and impact?
The one that we're currently working on, but we haven't achieved financial close on yet, although we hopefully will see that happen in the not too distant future, is in Manitoba, and that's the RSR project. So I think we'll have more to share in regards to lessons learned and the like subsequent to that project being achieving financial close. So stay tuned on that.
Great. I'm going to jump you over to zero emission vehicles and EV charging infrastructure. What funding opportunities does CIB provide for municipalities for the infrastructure in our rural, remote areas? And how much have you seen that uptake across Canada?
So the bank does have an initiative for charging infrastructure and hydrogen refueling. So for vehicles, to date, our investments have been alongside private companies who are building out regional, provincial, or national networks for electric vehicle recharging, as an example. So that is not one that we've been lending directly to municipalities. We've been lending to private companies for the purposes of that. Now, there's nothing that prevents a municipality or a group of municipalities or a province to run a procurement to select a private sector partner to build out that type of network, and we would be, obviously interested in lending to that private partner that the public sector selected through a competitive procurement to invest in that regional or provincial, province-wide network of electric vehicle charging.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place to be. Municipalities are changing their fleets and changing quickly. So it's great options. Now, climate.
I'm sorry, and I'll just add, if it is for the purposes of public transit, then that we have a separate offering where we can work with municipalities in regards to charging for public transit fleets and the like.
Great, great. Well, Jodie, our time is up. I could chat with you for another hour for sure. Unfortunately, I've booked us only an hour. So thank you so much for all the great information. And I hope we can host you again sometime really soon. We actually have one more poll to run before we let everyone go.
Thank you for
Ama
having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Sierra. Now, do you have a clear understanding of how to engage with the CIB? And there's multiple choices there. And were there specific opportunities or next steps discussed during the session to assist you in moving forward? We look forward to your responses. And just before that poll ends, Jodie, I have one more question for you. It popped into the chat. It says, does it mean that a charging network has to be provincial level to be considered, or regional one of several
Municipalities, I guess.
okay, municipalities would be considered?
Yeah, it would be a network, so we wouldn't be looking at one standalone. And so as long as it's serving a broader geographical area, and it goes back to the minimum investment threshold as well. But please reach out via the email that was on the last page of the presentation, and myself or my colleagues would be happy to discuss that further.
Wonderful. Now, Ama, is our poll ended?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Well, once again, thank you, Jodie, for attending today and making time to fit us in with your very busy schedule. It's truly appreciated, and I know we all learned a lot.
Great. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Stay warm. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.